Okay, welcome everybody to 7 Best Negotiating Chips. This is we have Jack Tumminello with us today to discuss this topic. But before I hand it over to Jack, I would love to talk to you really quickly about SCORE. Make sure that you know all the resources that we offer here in our chapter, in our district, and at the national level. Our goals are to share small business information with you through our website, score.org. You can find lots of great templates, videos, blogs, lots of great information. If you haven't dug around on the website, take a look. The other ways through our workshops, and we advertise those through social media, our newsletter. They are also listed on our website. So keep your eyes open for great new topics because we're always bringing in new topics. I think the most important thing that SCORE does is our mentoring. Mentoring is free and confidential, and our mentors come to us from all different backgrounds with different experiences and skill sets that they want to share with the small business community. A beginning session will be probably about 45 minutes. They want to know about you, what your goals and challenges are, and they're going to work with you to come up with a plan to be successful. It's not uncommon that you'll work with more than one mentor on your path as you're referred to others as your needs change. So how do you get a mentor? Super easy. There's multiple ways to get a mentor on the SCORE website. I think the easiest and the quickest is probably just to go to the score.org, put your zip code into the match me by zip code box, and that will connect you to the chapter that's nearest you. Then they're going to ask you quick questions on a form, and that information is used to match you to the mentor in that chapter to make sure that you're meeting with, if you needed financial help or startup help or whatever the case may be, that we get you matched to the right person to get things moving forward. So, a little bit about today. We are recording, and the recording will be available. We'll also have a follow-up email with some information for you on it. The recording will post in about 24 to 48 hours on the score.org/Boston website. If you look on the blue bar under local workshops, you'll see in the pull down the previously recorded section. We are going to interact through chat today, and we are going to also allow you to submit questions to Q&A. And I know Jack will have lots of great answers to those questions. So I'm going to go ahead and pull my share down, and I'm going to turn it over to Jack.
So,
Get a chance to get your, yeah.
are we there?
We're there.
Okay, great, everybody. Hi, good afternoon. It's still cold in Boston. But hey, listen, we all negotiate. We've been negotiating for our lives. Just think about your kids, your young kids. They throw a tantrum, right? What are they doing? They're negotiating. So it's built into us. They're negotiating, saying, I'm going to stop my tantrum when you give me what I want. So we all negotiate. You negotiate with your husband, your wives, your friends, your neighbors, your business partners, and so on. So that's not unusual. But what I'm going to be talking about here today is how do you do it better? Okay, so I'm not really here to talk about negotiating as such, but I will talk about how you can actually do it and be more successful at it, if you will. Okay, so let's talk about what we mean by negotiate. In very simple terms, it means to communicate. And when your son or your daughter throws a tantrum, they are communicating, and just not in the way you want them to, but they are communicating. And you're trying to do this in search of mutual agreement. So when you have that mutual agreement, you have negotiated with a D. So it is complete. You have an agreement. All right. So it's communicating in search of mutual agreement. We all know the examples of a police negotiator, hostage negotiation. Very common. It's the thing we see in the news all the time. There's all different types. This here one, this actually is a negotiation. This is from the movie Casablanca, where Ilsa and Rick are in the souk, with a souk, and he's trying to sell them some lace, and she's negotiating, and he keeps reducing the price, okay, as a way of incentivizing her to buy the lace. So it's essentially built into our lives. If you're a baseball fan, There's negotiation that's going on all the time. How long did it take us to get Bregman as a Red Sox? It took forever, but it was all negotiation. Interesting negotiation. I kind of follow this. Interesting negotiation. He wanted a long-term contract. They didn't want to do a long-term contract, but what they did do is they gave him a bundle of money for 3 years, which approached what he wanted over the 7 years. So, hey, they came together. They have an agreement. Let's hope that he has a great 2 or 3 years with us. This is a great movie, by the way. If you've never seen this movie, it's Bridge of Spies. It's Tom Hanks stars in this movie, which is all about Francis Gary Powers, who was a U-2 pilot who was shot down over Russia in the 1950s, I believe, late 50s, early 60s. And then the matter of an exchange that took place, a negotiation that had to take place outside the government. Tom Hanks plays an independent lawyer who is then charged by the president to go negotiate a deal with the Russians to get the pilot back. And it's actually a three-party negotiation between Russia, the United States, and East Germany, which is all part of this whole picture at that time. So if you want to watch something really an entertaining movie, I'm sure it's on Netflix or wherever you can pick it up. Better deals improve business. We know that we make a better deal, our sales are going to be better, our profits are going to be better, our relationships and joint ventures are going to be better. It's purchasing people and contracting people, they're always negotiating to get the best deal that they can get. It's very common. So better deals improve business. But it's not just these typical areas. You think of project teams, think of management, think of, being able to retain your employees better by being able to negotiate better salaries, better compensation, to manage disputes. These are all ways in which you can continue to develop your business and your organization through negotiation. It doesn't have to be sales and contracting and purchasing and so on. Your day-to-day business operations requires a great deal of interpersonal negotiation. So in the end, I always think of negotiation, and I don't know why it isn't taught more, but it's an essential business skill. It's absolutely essential. I need to go through this a little bit, and then we'll get into more of the meat of today's presentation. Let's talk about the anatomy of a negotiation and what actually takes place. So the anatomy of a negotiation really starts, and let's suppose we start from the buyer's perspective. The buyer wants to buy this car, is thinking about buying this car, and the buyer comes to that negotiation with an aspiration price and a reservation price. An aspiration price is what he would like to buy the car for. And he said to himself, that's a great deal. If I can get this for $4,500, I should probably add a 1 in front of the 4. But anyway, if I did that, that would be a great deal to get this car for $4,500. On the other hand, he's also saying, or she's also saying, well, I don't want to pay more than $7,500. And there's reasons, or $7,000 for it. There's reasons for that. And they are personal to the buyer. Okay. Now, on the other side, you have the seller. And the seller comes with the same things. He comes with, or she comes with an aspiration price and a reservation price. The aspiration price is, I'd love to get $8,000 for my car. I'd not only make a profit, I'd do this, and I can take a vacation and it would be wonderful. Okay. But he also has a reservation price. The reservation price might be, look, if I can't get $5,500, maybe there's better things I can do. Maybe I should donate it to a charity. Maybe I should give it to my sister's son who's going off to college and let him buy it for $1,000 and just, have my sister ingratiated to me, and it would be wonderful. So there are points in which you are bounded. Now, these are in dotted lines because neither party knows what the other is doing or what they're thinking, okay? And sometimes it can be a little squeamish and squeamish in the middle. So, but the area in where there's possible negotiation is called the zone of potential agreement. ZOPA, your zone of potential agreement. In other words, it's just where you overlap. And if you were to do this negotiation, the buyer might come along and say, well, how much are you asking for the car? And he said, well, 7,600. And he might turn around and say, oh, that's too much. He said, how about 5,800? And the seller responds and says, but it has $400 in new tires. And the buyer comes along and says, well, yeah, but okay, 6,200. I'll throw that in. And then the buyer again is promoting his sale. And he says, but the car only has 55,000 miles on it. Let's split the difference. So he makes an offer. Okay. And he says, okay, 6,900, take it or leave it. And it's a deal. So very simple. That's a negotiation. Buyer, seller, aspiration price. They still end up in the zone of potential agreement where they wanted to be. And this is a really key event that happened. The seminal book was written in 1981 by two Harvard professors, and it's called Getting to Yes. Probably many of you have read it or have seen it in the bookstores. There's a very simple message in this book, and it's when negotiation changed. It changed from competing to collaborating. That's the fundamental message of this book. Because prior to the book, it was always, I'm going to beat you. I'm going to win. I'm going to take. I'm going to, and you were acting with your own self-interest only. And what they're saying is that no, good negotiation really is about collaborating. Yes, you want what you want, but if you can give the other person what they want without giving anything away of what you have, then you might end up with a better deal. And you typically do end up with a better deal. And remember, business deals are not one-off. If you're negotiating with a customer or you're negotiating with a supplier, it's not going to be the last time you deal with them. So you have to really be careful that you be honest and truthful and work with a positive attitude toward it, not saying, well, how am I going to get the lowest price no matter what? And I don't care about that guy, et cetera, et cetera. You're collaborating. Figure out how you can collaborate and make things easier. It could simply be, listen, look they negotiated with Bregman. And the way they did it is they simply said, well, let's come together and figure out how we make this work. You want to come play for our team? We'd like to have you play for our team. How do we do this? And they finally twisted and turned all the dials and finally came up with a resolution that I think everybody truly was happy with. So it's a lot of conversation. Remember, communicating, okay? So in today's topics, here's what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about value. And I'm going to talk about leverage and strategy, okay? And then I'm going to talk about what I refer to as black swans, the unknowns that are in a negotiation. Then I'm going to talk about the human element of a negotiation, where all negotiators are human beings, and you cannot forget that. Then, of course, oh boy. And then, of course, we always deal with the devil. The person we don't want to negotiate, the person who makes life difficult for us. It could be a really difficult situation, but how do you deal with that and how do you work through it? And then, because you're going to have to do it, assuming you're going to have to do it, you're going to have to do it, figure out how to do it. And then closing the deal. Then I'll summarize everything. And please, if you got questions and answers, hopefully I'll have a few answers for you. And if you want to, Teresa is going to send you a little information afterwards, and on there you'll find my email address. If you want to share an experience with me, I'd love to read it. If you have comments about what we're presenting today, I'd love to hear them. And if you have a question that's simple enough, maybe I might have something to contribute. So let's talk about value, okay? Value. Relative worth, utility, or importance. Relative is a really important word here because it's independent. Worth, utility, or importance. We've all seen this picture, this slide, this graphic, right? This is the Dutch purchasing the island of Manhattan from the Canarsie Native Americans, supposedly. Okay, so going with the story here. And most people look at this and they say, oh my gosh, the Dutch really came across and they got the most fantastic deal. They got the whole island of Manhattan in exchange for like 60 guilders worth of goods. And people look at that and say, well, a really very lopsided situation. Poor Indians, poor Native Americans, et cetera. But let's think about this for a second. What did the Canarsie Native Americans get? They got cloth, which they didn't have. They got iron tools, which they didn't have. They got knives, which they didn't have. Everything else was made from nature. These items were forged. And they got a lot of things that they didn't have before. So in that regard, just that regard alone, there's another part here too. In that regard alone, this was really great. The other part of it is that they had more land, more ocean, more air, sea. What's an island out in the middle of the water? That's nothing. Go ahead, take it. You're going to give me this for that? There's nothing there. You can't get over there. You got a canoe. And if you know where Canarsie is a section of Brooklyn, which is way out near JFK Airport. And the strange thing about this occurrence, and it's a reality, the Canarsie Native Americans were simply hunting on the island of Manhattan at the time they were approached. And this deal was made. They took the goods, went back to Canarsie, and the Dutch ended up having to actually renegotiate with another tribe to actually get the rights to the island of Manhattan. And then you say to yourself, well, wait a minute. Weren't the British the ones who had Manhattan? Well, yes. This is like what, 1626, like in 1656, 30 years later, there was a deal, there was a treaty that was established between the Dutch and the British. And the Dutch traded the island of Manhattan for an island in the East Indies that produced nutmeg. And you say, well, isn't that a really lopsided deal? Well, it turned out that nutmeg was an extremely popular and very rich spice that was very popular, and the Dutch made tons of money selling it back in Europe. So you have to understand value. And value is relative. First of all, it's individual and it's personal. Let me explain. Let's suppose that I just got back from Europe and I had a €100 note. And you were all sitting in front of me, and I waved the €100 note in front. And I said, how much will you give me for this €100 note? Well, one person might say, I'll give you $90, okay, which is close to the exchange rate. Somebody else may say, I might give you $40. And somebody else might say, I'm not going to give you anything because I have no intention to go to Europe. What am I going to do with a €100 note? So it's all about individual and personal situations. What is it that you need and when do you need it? So in this particular case, one person says they could use it, another person says they can't use it. It's relative. Value is relative. The second part about value is that it's variable. Let's suppose that I'm walking down the street on my way to an interview. And I got my suit on, I'm looking great. All of a sudden it starts to rain. I dart into Macy's and I go over to the umbrella rack and I look at the umbrellas and it's $40 for an umbrella. And I go, oh, $40 for an umbrella. Wouldn't really buy this, but I can't go to the interview without being all wet. So you grab the umbrella, you go to the counter, you're just about to buy it. You look outside and the sun has come out. You put the umbrella back and you leave. So value at one point was really high. You needed that umbrella to get to the interview. As soon as the sun came out, the value disappeared. So value is relative and value is variable. And perception is reality. Let me explain. Here's a picture of a father tossing his son up in the air in the middle of the road for some reason. But he's having fun with his son, and father thinks it is being a great thing. The father's perspective saying, what's the big deal? This is really great. The son, on the other hand, is looking at it and saying, hey, Dad, this is a little high. Please don't throw me up this high. I'm a little scared. Get me a little scared. So the child's perspective and that child's reality is exactly what he or she is feeling. And then, of course, there's the mother's reality. And this is her reality is what she sees and what she perceives. So what you perceive is reality. So tip number one, don't assume what you value is what others value. The father thought it was fine to toss the kid up in the air. The mother did not. And they were at totally opposite ends of the spectrum. So you have to understand that if you make the assumption that, gee, this is really a valuable car and wouldn't you love to have this? The other person may not feel that way because maybe they don't like white cars. Maybe they don't like red cars. Maybe they'd rather have a green car. So what one person has, what they value is not the same as what somebody else values. Now, the second part we're going to talk about is leverage. You enter a negotiation, you leverage. When your son or daughter begins to throw a tantrum in the middle of church or in the middle of a restaurant, he or she is applying leverage. The leverage is give me what I want, otherwise I'm going to embarrass the heck out of you. And they are. So it's what you use to pull or push your counterpart closer to your position. Makes sense with a screaming child, all right? And of course, it's vice versa. It's what you can do in response to that. So negotiation leverage is what you use, and it's very different forms of it, everything from crying in the middle of church, okay, to offering to pay more money to buy a car. That's leverage. And there's positive leverage, and then there's negative leverage. You can look at this and say, I can offer you a discount on a program, and that entices you to come along and buy my product. You can do a lot of different things. You could offer a bonus. One of the things that this is kind of an interesting thing. A few years ago, I had a flood here in my condo, and the dishwasher overflowed and ruined the whole floor. And I had to have the whole floor taken up, hardwood floor taken up and replaced. So I got a guy come in, and he gave me a price for doing that work, not putting the floor down, but just getting rid of the floor that was here. And he gave me a price which really I thought was pretty high. But I knew that how am I going to get him to maybe come down on the price, because he's going to want something in return. So what I did is I said, look, I'm a very avid writer and critique on Yelp and on TripAdvisor, and I'd be glad. You do a great job, and if you can reduce your price, I'd be glad to write a great performance review for you that you can post on your internet or post on your website or whatever you would like. It turns out the guy came along and dropped $500 off of the price. He just needed to have a reason for doing it. I was giving him something that would take me 5 minutes to do, and he was very pleased because he was going to get the business Okay. And he was still going to make a profit, and he was going to get a great performance review. So it can come in different forms. Leverage is leverage. Let me ask you a question about leverage now. You go into a job interview, and it's the only opportunity you have. It's the only one you've got, times are tough. You're stressing, money is tight. How do you feel? I bet you feel anxious. I bet you feel concerned, worried, sweating, because you need to have this job. So all of that emotion, all that feeling is going to come out in the interview. Whether you like it or not, it's going to come out. It's very difficult to mask that. Now, let me ask you a question. How do you feel in a job interview when you already have another offer? You're willing to wing it. You feel confident. You feel as though you can negotiate, get a better deal. You're willing to take some risk because you have a backup plan. And this is really what gets to your most powerful piece of leverage. And your most powerful piece of leverage is your plan B. And in negotiation, they call it your BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. If I don't get this job, I still have another one. If I don't buy this car, I still can do this, or I can do that. So when it comes to getting ready for negotiation, your most powerful position in a negotiation is leverage. And your best leverage is your options. What options do you have? Do you have a good plan B? If you have a lousy plan B, like the person doesn't have another job, then you're really not in a really good position, because if they said, well, here's what the job offers price-wise or salary-wise and everything else, and it's not very attractive, you don't have a lot of leverage to go back and say, well, gee, could you increase the price? And if the company says, well, no, and if you do that, we're going to probably offer it to the guy down the street. So your best leverage is always to have a second option, and never stop building your BATNA. Okay. Salespeople used to come to me and they say, Jack, I got a deal. It's coming together. It's really nice, And I used to say to them, that's really good, Tom. Do yourself a favor. Go get yourself another deal. Go get yourself another sale. Go get another prospect. Build on it. Because when a negotiation finally comes about, you want to be able to say that even if I don't have this deal, I'm still going to make my quota because I've got another deal over here. But if you don't have that other deal, you might not make quota. You don't make quota, you don't make your sales, you don't get your bonus. So options, confidence, leverages better deals. And by the way, BATNAs are not static. They can come and they can go. You could be on your way to an interview thinking that you've got an interview, you're all set, you got another job offer back there, really sweet job offer. And on your way to that, on the way to that interview, you get a phone call and it says, I'm sorry, things have changed. Management is pulling back. We can no longer offer that position that we had. That option or plan B can go away just as quickly. So remember, it varies. So tip number 2, never stop building your BATNA. Always have a plan B and always keep on building new BATNAs. What else can I do? What else might I have? And that's where your strength in a negotiation comes from. Okay, now let's talk about strategy. Here's a question that almost everybody asks. Should I be the first one to make the first offer in a negotiation? When you think about it, if I were to ask the room here, by the way, we got about 100 and some odd people on this webinar, which is great. If I were to ask that of you, I would predict that if I looked out in the crowd and I said, should you be the first one or should you let the other person make the first offer? 60% of you would say, let the other person go first. Well, the actual point is that's not true. Okay. It's better that you make the first offer, and let me explain why. This is what they call the great anchor debate. When you make an offer, you're anchoring the negotiation. And anchors create a cognitive bias. Really important. They create a mindset. Couple examples. Here, social psychologists do this all the time. Are there more or less than, and don't mind the picture, I just had to have some kind of a picture here. Are there more or less than 2,000 jelly beans in this jar? Okay. And how many do you think there are? Okay, that's group A. Group B, are there more or less than 6,000 jelly beans in this jar? And how many do you think there are? Well, here's the outcome. Here's the scatter diagram. Notice when you put the number 6,000 out there, it creates a cognitive bias to that number, and it elevates where the thinking will be. So it's really kind of interesting to see how just by saying a number, it creates a cognitive bias. So by going first with a legitimate number, but going first, you're actually pulling the conversation to your position. Here's another one. Would you volunteer as a camp counselor for 2 days, 2 hours per week for 2 years? And when they asked this of college students, the group A, they said no. But then when they asked the question, would you volunteer for a single 2-hour trip? 50% of them said, oh, okay. All right. That's not as bad as doing it so there was a cognitive bias there. Now, let's suppose that you didn't ask, okay, the first question, which is really the anchor. Let's suppose you didn't do that, and you just simply said, would you volunteer would you volunteer for a 2-hour trip? Well, when they did this test without the anchor, 17%, only 17% said yes. So people have this sense of reflecting on the anchor that was established. 2 hours per week for 2 years. That's really strong. Okay. And then they said, 50% said yes to a 2-hour trip. Whereas if you didn't do the anchor, only 17% said yes. So 2 examples, there's tons of them out there. Go first. Everyday anchors. You go into a retail store, you go into Macy's, are they going to put the high-priced items out front or the high-priced items way in the back? No, the clearance items are way in the back. The ones up front are like, a beautiful sweater. Look at this great, $345 for this sweater. Oh my gosh, that's, a lot of money. But then you go back a little bit further and they have sweaters for $175. And all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, well, that's a heck of a lot better than 350. They established a cognitive bias. They established a bias. New car showrooms, sticker price, right? You see it in the price. All of a sudden you're negotiating from that point on down. Real estate listings, same thing. And salary offers can be the same thing. Somebody offers you a salary, you tend to negotiate off of that point rather than some other point. So the counter would be, how do you counter an anchor? How do you work around it? Okay. And there are ways. Let's suppose that you're going in for a job interview and they offer you $50,000 for a job. And you were really hoping to get $75,000, and you had a good reason for thinking that $75,000 was more an appropriate salary. because you went on the internet the days beforehand and you did research on jobs of similar responsibilities and tasks and so on, and found out that other employers were offering a job in the $70,000 to $80,000 range. It's very credible for you to turn around to that person and say, gee, I really, that's, I'm a little surprised. Don't say low. I'm a little surprised at the salary. I've been looking at other positions in other companies with the same parameters, if you will, and they're offering $70,000 to $80,000 range. You're now establishing a new anchor, but you're only able to do it when you have something credible to say. And to be able to show the person, well, here's the research, here's the information I got, here's another job offer I got from somebody else. That's all credible information, and it will move them off of their anchor and maybe up to your anchor. People have a fear of leaving money on the table if they go first. Well, the way you solve that is to do some research and figure out what the right number should be. And then maybe go a little above it because you're going to negotiate downwards. So you're not going to leave money on the table by going first. That's a fear. That's not a reality, at least if you do your homework. So when it comes to strategy, the best deal is to go first and anchor the negotiation. Okay, this is a good point here. So here's a little thing you can do in your spare time. We're not going to have time here today, but I always do this. You got 9 dots. I want you to draw 4 straight lines and connect the 9 dots together without lifting your pen from paper. And people, maybe many of you have seen this example, but it's going to drive home a point in a minute. So you say to yourself, well, how am I going to do this? And you can play with it on the side. You can take it home and do it with your kids or your wife or whatever, with your husband. It's kind of a fun little thing to do. Here's the answer. First of all, you go that way. Then you go that way. And many people will say, wait a minute. You went outside the box. There is no box. Your perception was a box. Many people perceived it because it was all aligned that way. It was a box. If I reorganized those dots, that they weren't in some kind of a square fashion, this wouldn't be an issue. Okay, but the way that this is organized, many people begin to think of it as a square. See, it's a square. It's not a square. So before you can think outside the box, okay, you have to be smart enough to know that you are in a box. And you are in a box. We're all in a box. We all have our own box, okay? And this is who we are as individuals. We come with our DNA and we come with our instincts and sensitivities and personalities. That's us. That's who we are. But that's who we are, okay? And then we are also defined by our education and by our life experiences, which gives us who we are. It defines us. And then your business, of course, is going to come in and create who you are. Well, what you need to know is you're not me. I'm over here, okay? But who you are is very different. And we all have to know that. And it goes back to the value point. What I value is not necessarily what you're going to value. And if I make that assumption, I'm going to lose. I'm not going to win. I'm not going to have a successful negotiation. So you're not me. It's important to understand that people are different. And this is where I want to talk about black swans. It used to be believed that all swans were white. until an explorer in the 16th or 17th century discovered that on the the western side of Australia, there were flocks of black swans. So the assumption is that they were white. Again, it goes back to the point of assuming, okay? You need to discover things. This is an actual example. This is, I put together I produced a program back in 2008, 2012 period. I put together a partnership between Disney and Chambers of Commerce. I came up with an idea and I said, gee, wouldn't it be great to run a series of conferences down at Disney? And the audience would be small business owners like yourselves. So I figured out, well, I got to convince Disney to teach the courses. So I got to cut them a part of the deal. And then I have to get Chambers of Commerce, because that's the other group. I leveraged them to promote the conferences to their members. And it was a sweet deal. One of the things I found out is that I had a price in my head. I knew that for like $2,000, I could offer, only excluding airfare, I would get you down to a 3-day program at Disney. Bring your kids, bring your wife, whatever. I'm going to provide you a hotel room at the Yacht Club, which was the actual, their best facility. And we'll do it for 3 days. You will be trained by Disney. You'll be their instructors, their people, and you'll go through this program. You can stay there, and the program will run from 7 in the morning until noontime. And at noontime, you're welcome to go off and do whatever you'd like to do, take your family out. So it was a great way of being able to have a business purpose, a business function, okay, and also some side benefits if you brought your family or your wife or your spouse, whatever. It was a great deal. So I negotiated the teaching part with Disney Institute, and that was great. I got the Chambers of Commerce on board. They seemed to like the idea. But I also, at the final piece, is I had to go negotiate with the resort folks, the hotel people, the Disney resorts. And that was not the same deal. So I went and I saw them and I talked to them, and they were quoting me prices that just we're not gonna work. $300-400 a night for hotel rooms, and it just wasn't going to work. And so I'm kind of fumbling around, and the other guy says to me, and this is why talking to people is so important. The other guy says to me, do you have to run the programs on the dates do you have flexibility in terms of the dates that you run the programs? I said, yeah, well, sure, I could do that. So it turns out that like June 6th to 8th in this particular situation was a down week for Disney. They have empty rooms that week. And it's just a perennial thing. So I just scheduled, we came to a deal where they gave me a huge discount for running the program at a time when they needed more people to take hotel rooms. And they gave me like 50% off of the program price or the hotel price. So it was a good deal. So the point is that you don't know what you're going to get. You have to talk to people. You have to look. You have to discover their interests, not their positions. Because in the Disney situation, the position was the price is $400 a night. That's the position. And I knew I wasn't going to make that work because a 3-night program for that's $1,200. It's just not going to work. Okay. But in the end, I found out that they had interest in discovering that if I conducted the programs at a different time and at different dates, and you can manipulate this in lots of different ways, they were willing to discount and deeply discount the programs to me. If you go to Europe and you got to go travel and you go on the shoulder seasons, you can get a sweet deal because their interest is filling, say, a rental or a hotel room in times when they're not going to get a lot of people. So in New York, the motto of uh, the police negotiators is talk to me. Kind of interesting. Talk to me. You need to talk to people because you read something on the internet and you read a price on the internet and you read a description. Yeah. They have to put something down there. Okay. But you need to go discover the possibilities. You need to seek the interest, not the positions that people have. And you ask a whole bunch of discovery questions, such as, well, how much, why, and what do you need, where? You ask the discovery questions that are going to elicit more conversation. And I'm sorry, but, face-to-face communication is so important, not just on the internet, but I think really if you can do things in person, I'm a total advocate of go see the person, go talk to them. It makes a huge difference. And when you are talking to folks, there's I read this one time, but it's kind of cool. It says, use your two eyes and your two ears and one mouth proportionally. In other words, listen, listen, listen. And we hear often people are not listening to me. Great negotiators work at it. They listen carefully. They pay attention to what you're saying. They need to understand completely, and they listen completely. We are all guilty of this. We overtalk a line. Somebody begins to say something, and we feel as though we have to complete it. Okay? No, listen completely to what they have to say. Listen to learn, to figure out what is it you're talking about. Maybe this is an area. I mean, I never knew what Disney was needed or had to have in terms of hotels, but I learned. And when you're listening to folks, avoid rebuttal listening, which is you're already thinking about what am I going to say to rebut what the other person is saying. Take your time, listen carefully. And ask clarifying questions. Well, how do you feel about that? Well, tell me more about that. So tip number 4, focus on interests, not positions. That's really very clear. Interests and positions are two different things. Okay, all negotiators are human. Here's what you need to remember. This is really important. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but they will never, ever forget how you made them feel. Maya Angelou, the author of the poet. So true. Just enter every negotiation, every personal interaction that you have with people, and always think about the fact that it's not what you're saying, and it's not what you're doing, it's how you're making somebody feel, because that's the remembrance. That's what they will remember. So when you're in a negotiation, you think about it, how do people feel here? How are the two gentlemen here feeling about the conversation that's going on? There's a pretty good, comfortable communication that's going on. And they're both leaning forward, they're not leaning backward. There's all the body language is there. It's a good feel. It begins with respect. Just a point of, take notes, but not too many notes. Pay attention to the other person. Look them in the eye. Look them. I personally do not like it when I teach and somebody opens up their laptop in front of them and just begins to type away and do whatever, and they're not paying attention to me as the instructor. It really bothers me. You may be doing it right now, but then again, it doesn't matter because we're on the internet. But pay attention to the person. It's a matter of respect. Be interested in and acknowledge their opinion with empathy if there's something that seems to be odd. Be professional, engage as an equal, of course. And if you make a mistake, I say, look, I'm sorry, I probably misquoted or misstated that. Let me backtrack here and clarify the point that I was trying to make. Ways to build rapport. this really works well. Start with a compliment. Anybody who starts a conversation with anybody, start with a compliment. You're going to win them over immediately. Remember and use names. I work at this a lot. It's a very powerful thing, very personal. Express empathy. Own and co-own problems. This is kind of interesting. Xfinity is the people that I deal with in terms of my internet. And when I have a problem, which happens, we all have it, right? My emotion is to call them up and start yelling and screaming at them and telling them that, they have a lousy service, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if I want to get to where I want to be, which is to have my problem solved, okay, I can go to them and say, hey, I've got a problem, yada, yada, yada. Or I can simply say, hey, look, I got a problem. I was hoping that maybe you and I can work together here to figure out what it is, and we can team up and solve the problem and move on. Very powerful. People love it. People stay on the phone with me for a long time, and they take me through the whole process. And here's the most powerful 4 words you can say to almost anybody. Can you help me? I used to call into businesses trying to get to the president of a company to make a sales call or so. And I would, this is a long time ago, I'm sorry, but I used to call into a company like 3M or something like that. I didn't know who I was calling. I just, they'd say, dial the extension. I'd dial an extension and somebody would answer. And they would say, Charlie Jones in engineering. And I said, Charlie, can you help me? I'm trying to get to the president's office. And 9 times out of 10, they would say, sure, let me transfer you up there. And they would get me past the gatekeeper. So can you help me? Have you ever stopped somebody on the street and said to them, can you help me? And they turn you down? No, I mean, people are people. They're really nice. Trust is a must. Don't ever do what Lucy's doing here. Words matter a lot. Think about it. If I ask you to think about the Red Sox season, you're going to give me some kind of an answer. And I tell you, how do you feel about the Red Sox season? You're going to give me a different answer. So words can move the conversation in particular directions. And as an example, my first business, I put together a business where I was, it was like an Amazon business before Amazon, but I was selling, they sold books. Remember how they sold books to get started? Well, I was selling training seats. I aggregated all the training calendars of all the training suppliers out there and put them in a database, and people could call me or call my company and they could say, hey, I'm looking for a project management course and I'm in Detroit and can you tell me where one might be available? Well, I could do that. Technically, it was easy. That was a piece of cake. But I had to get the supplier, the training organizer, to agree to pay me a fee for doing this work. So we would go to them and say the business model was okay, we're going to do this, we're going to promote it, we're going to do this, and this. And when we do put somebody in your seat, you pay us a 30% commission. And they would turn around and say, oh, no, we don't know 30%. And it was really, when you're starting a business, it was kind of like, we were hitting a wall and it was not good. I had raised some venture money. It was going to run out. We had to figure out some way around this. In a staff meeting, one of the guys that worked for me said, well, why don't we change it? Instead of telling them we want a 30% commission, why don't we say that we want to buy their program at 70% of their list price? And once we changed that wording, we never had another problem. People just don't pay 30% in commissions. but they're more than glad to let you buy their program at 70 or 60% of list price. Piece of cake. So changing words, changing phrases, changing the way people perceive the word commission is immense. So tip number 5, they'll never forget how you made them feel. Feelings are so important. Dealing with the devil. Okay, or not bad time. Yeah, here he is. This is the guy we're going to see. We're sweating, we're nervous, we're uneasy. He's got all the leverage. Not looking good. It's usually some assertive personality, kind of a win. I want to win and wants to control, wants to feel important, and is really uncompromising. And so, how are you going to make progress with this person? First of all, build your own confidence and know your stuff. Know your stuff. Okay. If you know your business and you know your product and just that's your foundation. Okay. Anticipate the toughest questions that person or persons are going to ask you, and brainstorm answers with other people, with your friends, your colleagues. Brainstorm answers. How do I, when the person says this, what are you going to say to them? And then you're going to say, and then they're all going to look at you and you're going to go, nah, that doesn't work. How about if you did this? Now, how about so brainstorm answers and practice out loud until you say something out loud. You can be in your car thinking about how you're going to say something when you arrive at the appointment. But if you're in the car and if you say it out loud, it's better for you because saying it, you get the words right. Thinking it, it's not completely formed yet. So talk to yourself in the car on the way to the appointment. And if you have an opportunity, if you're making a call, just to be, a telephone call to somebody, stand up. It's amazing what a difference it makes for you. It gives you strength. It gives you confidence. And so if you're dealing with the devil, stand up and talk to him. If he's on the other phone or she's on the other phone, stand up and talk. Don't sit down. Check your emotions at the door. This is really important. It's not personal. It's business. 90% of the time, it's not personal. Some people hate me. Some people, there are other people that hate you probably too. But most of the time, it's just business. They're just being tough negotiators. You could be, and this was somebody told me a long time ago. You have no idea what's happening in that person's life that day. So you go to this appointment and all of a sudden this guy is barking at you or this woman is barking at you and you feel as though, why, what did I do? What did I do? It may not be about you at all. They could have had a fight with their spouse before they left. Somebody could be sick. They could be feeling lousy. They could be hungover from the night. Who knows? Okay. But it may not be you. Okay. And sometimes you can just simply offer some empathy to kind of calm down the situation. Emphasize commitment and just simply say, look, these are difficult situations. And what I'm really trying to do in representing my company is to come out with the best mutual outcome for the two of us. So I hope you'll trust that that's my intention. Keep focused on the problem. You can say, don't say no, suggest options. So if you want to say no, you can't do that. No, we're not going to do that. Turn it around and just simply say, well, what if we were to do this, or what if we were to do that? It's a softer way of saying no. Make your idea their idea. That is pretty cool. Teresa said to me before something about something or other. So I just turned what I think is an idea into what is her idea, and she's going to feel better about it. So make your idea their idea. Listen, They want to be heard and involve others if you have to. Bring your sales manager along, bring your colleague along, bring whomever along. Sometimes having a second person hear and see what's going on is really important. If conflict arises, take a break, apologize, stay calm, and avoid escalation. That just, I mean, you're just kicking it up and it's going to blow up and it's not going to be, take a break. So it doesn't, I really kind of need to, let me call my manager back at the office and see what he think about what you're telling me now. Well, that's a ruse, but you're really trying to just buy some time to get out of the meeting and come back in 10 minutes. Keep your focus on the problem, not the individual. Don't think about the individual. So closing the deal. I think that if you're going to go into negotiation, if you're going to spend an hour in negotiation, you should be spending at least 4 hours in preparation for that. Internet research, thinking about it, studying it, talking to your colleagues. 4-to-1. Are you talking to a decision maker? This is a very common flaw. You could be negotiating with somebody and then the person says, well, I'll take it to my manager and see what they have to say. Well, that's not where you want to be. You want to be talking to the decision maker. Have a strong bat now. Know what your plan B is going to be. And establish a win-win rapport with people. And focus on interests and make a good faith effort. And if you've done all of this, then you're really ready to ask for the order. But here's the things that'll make it fail. If you don't have rapport, lack of trust, lack of empathy, these are all things that are rather obvious, but these are the things that are going to make a deal fall through. As I said before, relationships matter. Don't burn bridges. Explore with, well, what if we did this and what if we did that? Use think and feel tactically. Sometimes in a conversation, you want to be able to have them think about something and other times you might want to have them feel about something. And you're really getting to the responses that you want to get to. This is really important. Keep an open mind. You're not the brightest bulb in the world. Other people have other ideas and other thoughts, so keep an open mind. Maybe they've got something to contribute that you hadn't thought of that's actually to your benefit. I heard this one time. It says, good news in bites, bad news all at once. So if you got bad news to deliver, do it all at once. But if you got good news, it was really kind of an interesting scenario. They said that people would rather find two $10 bills on the ground in sequence, like for today and tomorrow, okay, than they would rather find a $20 bill one time. Interesting. Social psychology is so great. And hear all the issues before negotiating. Usually when you get to a deal, the person might say, okay, I'm glad you're here, Tom or Jack. Listen, we've got a number of things to discuss today, and we want to go through all of them with you. And so maybe we can discuss them along the way. And they say, okay, well, let me go. I got 7 items here. Let me go through the 7 items with you. And then they'll start. And the first item is et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then they'll say, well, how do you feel about that? What do you want to do with that? What do you think about that? And they look for you to respond. Well, that's a ploy. Listen to all 7 first. Very, very, very important. You say, okay, all right, I'll take a note. Okay, what's number 2? What's number 3? What's number 4? If you do it piecemeal, you're going to get destroyed. If you wait and you listen to the whole picture, you'll have a much better way of being able to respond in a much more intelligent fashion. So hear all the issues first. Asking for agreement. Most people are afraid. Tom, do we have an agreement? Do you think we're together here? Can we say that we have an agreement? Are we willing to enter an agreement? I'm pretty good. How about you? You feel good about this? Yes, no. And if not, why not, right? All your counterpart can do is say no. That's all they can do, is say no. Huh. And if they say no, the answer is, well, tell me why. Tip number seven, all your counterpart can do is say no. They're not going to shoot you. They're not going to kick you out of the office. And you get the opportunity professionally, if everybody's been professional, to come back and say, well, help me understand why this doesn't work for you. Because I'd like to try and figure out how we can come together with an agreement that's of mutual benefit to both of us. So what are the 7 tips? Don't assume what you value is what others value. Never stop building your BATNA. Your plan B is really, really important. Go first and anchor. Yeah, it sets a cognitive bias, which really will work in your favor. Focus on interests, not positions. You look on the internet and it says, here's the price of a product. That's position. Okay, that's not interest. There are other interests under now. You remember that cartoon back there which showed the iceberg and then the iceberg below? That's really a good. So there's so much down below the surface that you're not seeing, and you've got to ferret it out and get it out. They'll never forget how you made them feel. Keep your focus on the problem. If you're dealing with that person, focus on the problem, not the person. And all your counterpart can do is say no. That's my story. More than glad to answer any questions that you might have. I hope this was helpful to you. And I think Teresa's going to send you some information. So Teresa, is there any questions there?
You know what? They're all thank yous and loved this program and that type of thing. We will, send out the follow-up email that'll have the recording link, the handout, and I'll also give you Jack's contact information. If you do have any questions that you think of later, you can reach out to him directly so that you have that information. And just lots of thank yous in the chat there, Jack. Lots of thank
Good.
yous.
That makes me feel good.
Yes, well, definitely. Okay, well, thank you, everyone, and we hope to see you on a future webinar. Thank you.
Bye-bye.